Welcome to the Grand Prix 24/7 podcast, your weekly insight into the world of Formula One. Hello and welcome to the Grand Prix 24/7 podcast. I'm your host Will, and as always I'm joined with Ben Stevens and Paul Velasco to preview the Bahrain Grand Prix and just tie up some of the loose ends within the world of Formula One over the last week or so. Ben, how's it going?
Excellent, Will. I'm excited for Bahrain. It's always a great track to see some F1 action at, so looking forward to the weekend getting started.
And Paul, you excited about the return of F1 this weekend?
Yeah, of course. And I think, Bahrain's going to, some people complain about it, but if you look back in history, they've often delivered good races. So, yeah, I'm looking really forward to it.
It's probably one of my favourites as a standalone kind of racetrack. We had an excellent race there last season with the Ferraris on pole. Well, Ferrari of Charles Leclerc on pole, but then we had the battle between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, and we obviously had Charles Leclerc's engine having an issue right at the end, and he had dropped back to third. But it was a really good race, and I'm hoping for something similar this season. But Ben, if we are going to see something similar, who's going to challenge the Mercedes? And if not, how do you see this Mercedes battle playing out?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? If it's anyone, I suppose you still get a bet on Max, aren't you? But that would be, at least in my opinion, I think most people's opinions though, a pretty foolish bet. I think it's basically between the Mercedes and in that particular fight, especially with the championship now wrapped up for Lewis, I think it could it could take a bit of pressure off both of them, especially Valtteri. It's all about next year now, so maybe that sort of puts him in the right frame of mind to really push Lewis here, and hopefully that gives us a good race.
Yeah, I think Bottas' best hope is really to go on one of those kind of Rosberg runs at the end of 2015, really put the pressure on Lewis and actually kind of like change the narrative of the end of the season. Going from one where he's been pretty comprehensively beaten to one where he has a shot. Paul, do you think that Max can get in there after the disappointment of last weekend? Maybe Racing Point, have they taken a step forward? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to just talk a bit about Bottas. Valtteri, look, he got absolutely thumped, like he's never been thumped in his life in Turkey. If you look at what Hamilton did to him, he was 7/10 quicker in quali, and then he lapped him in the race. And I think Valtteri's on the ropes. He's got to finish, I think, with a flourish. He's got a contract for next year, but seriously, I think he's got to reassess everything he's thrown at Lewis. Look at the battle plan he's had for the last 3 or 4 years. He's been his teammate and rip that up. Make that phone call to Nico Rosberg and say, mate, come handle me, come be my manager, and come get in Lewis's head with me so I can win a championship, or at least make a fight of it. But honestly, I don't think Valtteri's got it to take it to Lewis at this level. So how he comes back from what I think is his biggest career defeat against Lewis, against anyone, how he comes back in the next 3 races is going to be very important for his full-on future. Because seriously, I think Turkey was his downfall.
Bottas has been thumped by Hamilton before. You look back to Portimao this season, and then actually at the next weekend he came back in Imola. He came back pretty strong and put the car on pole and could have won the race had it not been for his issue that he had with Sebastian Vettel's kind of front wing end plate getting stuck underneath his car. So I do think that he is able to recover. Obviously, he's never able to recover and then actually put a run together. But I do think he can put those kind of big defeats behind him, and I hope he's able to, because I think one of the great things about last season was that even though Hamilton wrapped up the championship early, we actually had a couple of really good races afterwards. So you think of Brazil, obviously Hamilton had already won the championship, but we had one of the best races of the season with, the Ferraris colliding, Pierre Gasly getting on the podium, Carlos Sainz getting on the podium.
You asked about Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Look, I think he can always bring it. I think in Turkey he'll be looking back at that and say, I was just too impatient, maybe slightly too immature. But if anyone can take it to Lewis, to the Mercedes, it's going to be Max. And I hope that he just has the car. I'd like to just suggest that Red Bull traditionally have come really strong at the end of the season. And I must say, I haven't seen that strong Red Bull at the end of the season. I still think Max is driving the pants off the car. So, yeah, he's definitely got a chance. And, the Ferraris, they looked good. Let's see if they've got some momentum and they're upwardly mobile. It's a track where, they could go well. So, yes, I think Mercedes might have a challenge. But really, for me, the most exciting thing is the battle for third place in the championship.
Yeah, it's an interesting battle for sure. And
joke.
Well, me and Ben think it's interesting, but Ben, I think just not just in terms of the battle for third, but in terms of the general order, and the way that the cars have developed over the year, it's been incredibly dynamic. I think so. We all kind of coming out the box, we thought Racing Point would be really strong because obviously they kind of copied the Mercedes philosophy last season. But it actually looks like it's taken them time to get on top of things, especially Sergio Perez. And suddenly he's come back really strong. McLaren started the year really strong but have kind of faded and had a good result to kind of recapture a few points in Turkey. Renault have obviously got stronger and stronger as the year's gone on. And Ferrari even look like they're getting stronger now. And they took a podium in Turkey as well. So what do you make of this kind of really dynamic order?
Yeah, well, we all wish that was the case at the front, but it never really has been in F1. Maybe it will be in 2022, but I don't know. But in terms of the actual, as you say, sort of this development race that's been this year, which has been, I think fascinating to follow, even if some people don't think so. Cough, cough, Paul. Yeah, it's been sort of maybe not back and forth, but it has been sort of all over the place, and it's particularly fascinating to me to see Ferrari join the fray because that car has been such a dud, but it has shown definite signs of improvement. At the same time, a result or not even a result, but a race like Turkey where you've got these crazy conditions, even without the rain, where there's just no grip on the track, and it's things outside the pure pace of the car that can decide your performance. That may be sort of altered the true sort of performance of these cars, or masked it is probably a better word. So a car like Ferrari, it would not surprise me at all if they're back to being decisively worse than the other midfield three there. At the same time, they are Ferrari and they've got millions and millions of dollars more than all those teams. So maybe this is just a case of their development actually finally paying off. And that's something I'm really looking forward to finding out this weekend. And then, as you say, like a team like Racing Point seems to have bounced back. McLaren's the strange one. I still honestly don't know. If Andreas Seidel says they're probably not the third or the fourth fastest, I'm going to listen to what he's saying. That's what he's saying. So yeah, for them it's sort of about maybe all the other teams needing that unlikely thing in the race to happen to sort of give them that little bit of a boost. But that's what happens in F1. Every race, there's always something that's a bit out of the box that happens. Safety car at the right time, wrong time. Someone goes off. Takes a rival out. Whatever it is, there's all those things at play. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the way that the order has been so dramatic this season does give me quite a lot of hope for the off-season. Because obviously we have this token system introduced. We know that there aren't going to be huge changes to kind of like the fundamental parts of the car. But the way that the kind of week-by-week updates have changed the order and the way that it has kind of jumped between one car and the other does give you hope. Going into next season, that we're not just going to see a kind of cut and paste version of this season once again, even if that could be the case right at the front. Paul, I know you've been critical of Ferrari this season, but they have certainly weathered the storm. If you look back to how awful they were in Monza and Spa, do you think they deserve any credit for coming back from obviously what was a difficult ruling by the FIA in terms of their competitiveness and the way that they're kind of getting back on track just about?
No, not really. To be honest, no. I think Ferrari shot themselves in the foot and they're still limping around. I'm going to go out on the limb and sort of make a prediction here. Look, I think it's going to be slippery because of the sand. There's a lot of sand in the desert, and although it's unlikely to have rain, that sand sometimes when it kicks up a sandstorm. I remember when I worked at Dubai Autodrome, you'd have days where you had to sweep the track, so it is a very slippery track. I saw the Racing Points very good in those conditions. I'm going to predict Merckx and the Racing Points up there. Of course, Max biting at their heels. And let's see, I don't think Ferrari are going to be good this year. See, I think there was a bit of an anomaly in Turkey, and I think we will see the real Ferrari step up at Bahrain. I hope it's different. I mean, I really, like everyone, wishes for a strong Ferrari. But, they've already got a 2-year plan to be competitive. I don't think within 2 races their, shitbox of a car is suddenly like good. End of the day, you've also got to factor 2 things. They've got 2 fantastic drivers in those cars. So as bad as the car is, it's never going to be seen how really bad it is unless Vettel has one of his bad days, and you really see how bad that car is then, which we didn't see in Turkey because Seb raced his game in those kind of conditions. And then you take Charles, who's driving the pants off the thing, and probably, over half a second faster than Seb, but still out of the top 4 or 5. So that car is still a brick, and I think the 2 drivers, especially Charles, is taking it further and further because he's adapting to the car. I mean, the car's not... I don't think every weekend he sits in that car and there's an update and he fires the thing up and he comes back and he says, wow, guys, this update is wow. I think Merck, that happens. They put an update, the car's better. Ferrari put an update, the car goes backwards. So I don't really know what's happening for Ferrari. I don't believe anything's changed in the last 3 to 4 months. Binotto's still leading alone. The situation that was at Ferrari 3 months ago when everyone was saying this is chaos and crazy, it hasn't changed. It's just under the radar because other things have happened. But I wouldn't, if I was a Tifosi and I have Tifosi friends, I'll say to them, please guys, don't raise your hopes because I have to deal with you after Ferrari get another pounding.
I think you raised some good points there, and I think that you're right in the sense that...
I might be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, but I think you're right in the sense that because it's not quite as much in the spotlight as it was. I mean, you think back to Monza and they're getting completely battered. Both cars retiring from the race. They've got absolutely no pace. And, everyone's just like, how have things got this bad for Ferrari? I think the question for me, Ben, and I wonder what your thoughts on this is, seeing kind of how Ferrari struggled to match Mercedes over the hybrid era. They got a good car in 17 and 18, but then they kind of slipped back. And then we obviously found out this problem... not a problem for them, a problem for the FIA, I suppose, with the fuel flow in the engine. How much faith do you actually have in Ferrari that they can kind of get back on track in, if not next year, but as Paul said, over this 2-year plan and get back on track in 2022 when the new regulations come in?
Well, it's very tricky to know. And the thing as well is that, like, historically you would say, 2 years, it's Ferrari, they've got this massive budget. They'll always sort of, if for whatever reason the ship starts to sort of, lean to one side, they can always ride it just because they can just throw money at the problem. And that's not really going to be the case starting from next year, where even if the spending cap isn't necessarily in place next year, you've got all these restrictions in terms of, what you can do with development. So that's going to make it very tough. And I still would lean towards them getting their act together, but in terms of going from they would basically, and this could be any team. This is the thing; it could be any team, but they would need to sort of whatever the best concept is for the 2022 reg cars, they would just need to come up with that. But I don't think that's sort of exclusive to Ferrari. That's nothing they can pay for. It's as likely to come from an engineer at McLaren or Racing Point as it is from Ferrari. So there's a realistic chance that maybe they're not this bad, but the new normal is for them to be amongst the field as opposed to above it or in front of it.
Because you know what? Okay, but let's be honest. You can't predict 2 years. 2 years we're going to be at the front. So, yes, we hope so. But what about the other guys? They're not going to be sitting still. You know what I mean? We've always had this discussion, Ben, that these teams say, like McLaren, we'll be back in 3 years. Ferrari, we'll be back in 2 years. How do you know that? You just don't know it.
I think you make a good point about McLaren. It's like McLaren say, we've got this 2-year plan. We've got this we're gonna come back and get better. And we've seen McLaren. Obviously, last season was the big step forward. Everyone was shocked. Go back to 2018 and they were one of the worst cars on the grid. Suddenly, they're back at the front of the midfield. And this season has shown how difficult it is to kick on. Those initial gains are really, are relatively easier to come by. But then you kind of get into this bit, and these other teams are spending a lot of money. They've got a lot of expertise behind them. And just taking that next step is really hard. I think, obviously, the advantage McLaren has is they're getting a new, better engine next year by changing over to Mercedes. But you're right. Like, you can kind of make these initial improvements, but no other teams are standing around and not improving themselves. So it is difficult once you've kind of made that initial step to just keep getting better. And actually, you're not just getting better; you're having to overtake and get better quicker than other teams. And that's the real challenge for Ferrari, because no other team is going to be standing still, and everyone's going to be spending going into 2022 and really focusing on nailing those regulations. Even teams like Williams, even we don't know what they could produce going into new regulations as well.
Can I launch a conspiracy theory regarding
go
McLaren?
for it, please.
Okay, Ben, this is for you, and you can bounce it off Sadel when you speak to him, because I know you're part of the fanboy thing that meets after. Okay, cool, very nice. We'll take over that team. No, I'm thinking this way. McLaren, at the beginning of the season, mate, they were hitting home runs. That thing looked like a podium, even a win, right? It was just beautiful, that car. Okay. What happened next? They announced Mercedes. I'm prepared to say, as conspiracy theory launcher in chief, Cyril then went and said, you see those shit engines in the corner there? Those are the ones that are going to McLaren now. And since then, McLaren are on the back foot. Honestly, would that be, if I was Renault, if I was like Paul Velasco Motors and I powered McLaren and they had just jumped ship to Mercedes and I had a batch of shit engines in the corner, for sure, I would say, hey, guys, ship the bad batch to these boys. And I think McLaren might be in that quandary. Like I said, conspiracy theory, I have no facts to prove it, but I'd be curious to be a fly on the wall when Zach sometimes picks up the phone and says, hey, Cyril, how is your car that quick and our car isn't? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's just my conspiracy theory. That's why McLaren are not where they should be. Next year will be the big moment for McLaren, where Mercedes engines, then they can level against the best player in the field. Then we'll know where they stand. But right now, against Renault, dodgy. Even the Red Bull relationship with Renault at the end also got a bit murky, and we had Marco talking about inferior engines and stuff. But anyway, I'm just saying, just putting it out there.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, like, I love it, first of all. That's the sort of spice we need in F1, especially at this point in the season. So well done to you there, Paul. And it's interesting. I wouldn't go that far. I can't say I believe that, but there is sort of, as you say, with Marco and the then Toro Rosso, there was a bit of beef, wasn't there, with how that relationship ended, because they were in direct competition. There were sort of allegations that Renault sort of weren't providing the support they needed at the time to Toro Rosso. So it's been interesting. I mean, the McLaren Renault relationship has always been maybe not the same, but
cordial.
Yeah, it's always seemed quite cordial, and I think part of that is because it was sort of always assumed that McLaren would take an opportunity, like a better opportunity, as soon as it came along. It was never like sort of viewed as like, long term. So maybe that sort of made it less sort of acrimonious with the split. I don't know. But you're right. Like at least from Renault's side, assuming you could get away with it, and I don't think they could, but like if there's something they could do to get away with it, it does make sense, because these are your direct competition. But as I say, yeah, I don't necessarily see how they would do it. And if McLaren's not causing a stink about it, I'm inclined to sort of just let it go. But fingers crossed it is true.
Yeah, okay. If they're not making a stink about it, I agree with you. But have you heard of NDA? Now, NDA is probably the most signed document in the Formula One paddock, according to a lot of people. Okay, so it's like, do you remember when Felipe Massa complained that his Mercedes engine in the Williams was not quite the same as the Mercedes engine that Lewis had. And then a day later, he had to say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. It was actually messed up in translation." Trust me, works engines are always going to be better than client engines, no matter from karting right up to Formula One. You know, they make 10 engines, they blueprint them, they dyno them, they check them, and they say, these are the 3 best ones, these are the 7 shit ones. Okay, ship the 7 bad ones. And that's how it works, mate. That's how it works with engines from Rotax right up to Formula One engines. In the Cosworth era, it was the same. You had great DFVs and you had not so great DFVs. They were all brilliant, but you had great ones. And if you built the engines, you knew. And I'm telling you, I do not believe, and I never will believe, that the power units in terms of the package and everything that's bolted onto the back of a works team is the same as it's backed onto a client team. I won't accept that.
And McLaren obviously did beat Renault last season with the same engine, but that, as you say, that won't have gone down well with Renault. We obviously saw that there was some speculation that Cyril was having to fight for the literal existence of the team going forward, and now Renault have kind of made this big commitment. So I'm inclined to think that Renault have made a step forward. It looks like they do understand their car better, but
of course, no, they have. I think they're the number 3 team now. If you, Ben, what would you say? You the stats guy at the moment.
Yeah, it's very tough. I think I'd give them the slight edge, but the caveat is it depends on the driver, right? And Ricciardo's the best of that midfield crop. But in Ocon's hands, is it the 3rd best car? Probably not.
Yeah,
true, and they've actually, I think, Ben, they went on this great run since kind of the halfway point. Obviously, Ricciardo had that great race at Spa, and ever since then he's been really putting in some excellent results. But they've kind of taken a big step back in Turkey, where Racing Point had a great race. McLaren ended up salvaging some good points, and suddenly they go from being 3rd to 5th, and that's just the nature of this battle. It's so tight that one bad race and you're really up against it. Even if they do well in Bahrain, which I expect them to do. I think that Bahrain and Abu Dhabi will definitely suit the Renault car better than it will suit the McLaren. But they've given up a decent advantage when they were ahead. So it is going to be really interesting to see what happens. And that's the kind of battle I'm really looking out for last season. If you remember back to Abu Dhabi 2019, Carlos Sainz actually, I think, didn't he make an overtake on the final lap of the race to clinch like 6th in the championship? I know that's not exactly the most glamorous honour, but it's pretty exciting, and that would have been a big part in the rising stock behind Carlos Sainz and him getting Ferrari seats. So these things do matter. It matters to the teams as well. So I'm interested to see it. But I think we should probably wrap up. Paul and Ben, I'll just give you a kind of final word on Bahrain and just what you're looking for this weekend, even though the championship is done and dusted. Paul, if you want to go first.
No, I just want a good race. I want to have talking points and stuff. But really, I'm keeping an eye on the Formula 2 race because Mick Schumacher could win the championship, and that means a big, you guys don't realise at this stage because you're young lads, but if Mick makes it into Formula 1 and he's pretty good, there's a new legacy being built. And I tell you what, it starts with clinching the championship, which he has 2 races to do, or he has a few races to do in. So I'm very, very pumped for that. I think Mick has ticked all the boxes, and I think he'll be one of the highlights to watch this weekend. And there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but I think he's paid his dues, and he'll follow his father into Formula 1. And I think that's the best thing that can happen to Formula 1, because not only is he a nice guy, not only is he Michael's son, but he's actually a very good lad and a good driver. He's actually a good driver. He progresses and he becomes solid, and I think he's just going to get better and better, very much like his dad. So that to me is going to be one of the highlights of the weekend. And I'm just hoping for a fantastic race.
No, I'd absolutely like to second that, Paul. I'm also been a big fan of following Mick's development, and I think it's important for motorsport in Germany as well. Obviously, we had kind of about 6 Germans on the grid a couple of years ago, and now we're just back to Sebastian Vettel, and even he's not doing so well. So, with Vettel in a new team, potentially a new lease of life at Racing Point, and Mick Schumacher driving a Haas, I think that'd be great for motorsport and F1 in Germany as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him in Bahrain too. Hopefully he can wrap up the championship and secure that seat, because it'll be excellent to see. Although, of course, we've still got British driver Callum Ilott in with the shot as well. So, I'm really looking forward to that battle. We've got 4 races around Bahrain over the next 2 weeks, and we'll see who comes out on top. But Ben, just you, final word?
Yeah, well, I think I agree with basically everything you guys said, especially Mick, and that F2 fight's going to be fascinating. I think the one thing I'd add is I'm looking forward to sort of the 3 guys, and these are the 3 guys that have been under pressure for a while, but seeing how they respond after their particular races in Turkey. So that's Valtteri Bottas. He's got a lot to bounce back from. Alex Albon, who we could really use. These final 3 races, it's basically for his Red Bull career, I think. And then Sebastian Vettel, whether that podium in Turkey does actually mark a turning point or not. I guess we'll hopefully find out this weekend.
I'm also sorry, just one more thing in closing. I'd also like to see if Stroll can do a double pole in a row. That would be really cool.
If only. Good luck with that.
Cool,
I think
thank you for that.
I think I would actually join you, Paul, in your Lance Stroll appreciation club if Lance manages to pull that off, because a pole in the wet on a kind of slightly weird, not fully rubbered in track is one thing, but if he goes and puts it on pole in Bahrain, then I think a few people will have to eat their words, including Ben.
Yeah, but, absolutely.
We won't believe it until we see it.
Can I say something? If Lewis or Seb or Max had done the lap Stroll had been on, the headline from Ben would have been the lap from the gods or whatever the case. It'd be like, oh.
No. I'll tell you what the headline would have been. It would have been a lap money can't buy. Shots fired.
Brilliant.
Didn't work out that way, though.
Okay, guys. Thanks.
That's enough Lance Stroll slander and Ben slander for 1 week.
Hey. I'm the fan club president.
I'm the anti-fan club president.
We will be back to review the race on Sunday, and of course you can follow all the action on our website, grandprix247.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.
See ya.